All right. If you're a teacher that feels exhausted, and I don't mean just physically, but I mean at your core, then this conversation might explain exactly what's going on in life. Burnout, that's not just about working long hours. Sometimes it's about losing who you are. And today's guest hit rock bottom after a student that he coached was killed in a tragic accident. And it led, that trauma did, to PTSD. But it also forced him to confront a question that most educators never get help in answering. And that is, who am I now? And what he discovered was a 5 step framework that he's now using to help teachers rebuild their identity and not just manage stress. And so, if you're a teacher watching this tonight, stay with us. It might feel personal, but if you're looking for help, this is the place to get it. David, tell us about your upbringing and your relationship with baseball, if you would.
Yeah, absolutely, John. First of all, thanks for having me. The work that you're doing to support teachers, it's so needed. It's so long overdue, and so kudos to you for that.
Thanks, man.
I grew up in a small town in Western Maryland, big baseball town. Grew up playing baseball. I was a catcher. My childhood best friend, Nick Adenhart, he was a pitcher, and
Mm-hmm.
from a young age you could tell there was something different about it, right? Like there are kids who people watch and they say like, oh, they might play in the big leagues, but with him, it was for real. And so we grew up. I called him my whole life. I had gone away to college. He had gotten drafted by the Los Angeles Angels,
Mm-hmm.
and everything was going according to plan. Honestly, and then on April 9th, 2009, he made his fourth career start, but it was his first start that season.
Mm-hmm.
He was going to be in the big leagues full time. And that night, he was killed by a drunk driver. Um,
Holy
and
cow.
yeah, it was, we'll get a little bit more into the trauma and
Mm-hmm.
things like that, but there's definitely a lot of very specific moments
Mm-hmm.
that I remember from that morning when I
Right.
found out. But I graduated school, went back home to be a teacher and a coach, which is, that was always a dream that I had.
Mm-hmm.
Something that, I knew I felt like it was something that I was good at, and something that I wanted to do. And I was fortunate enough to become the head coach at my alma mater where Nick and I played together, Williamsport High School.
That
Um,
is awesome.
in Western Maryland. Yeah. At the my first day as a head coach, I believe I was 22 years old. Um,
Holy cow.
so my first season we had a pretty good year. One of our pitchers, Brendan Cauliflower, he won Pitcher of the Year. We made it to the state semifinals,
Is
which
that
is
right?
that's a pretty big deal. Um, and so then flash forward to 2012. And on May 6th, 2012, Brendan and his prom date, Samantha Kelly, they were killed in a car accident on prom night.
Holy cow.
Yeah. And, I always feel the need to say this, but Brendan and Sam, man, they were such good kids. Obviously knew Brendan better than
Mm-hmm.
Sam, but I have to say, I have three girls, uh,
Right.
full time girl dad here, and Sam was everything that I would hope for any of my girls to be. And so it definitely, it shook our community.
Right.
I felt like our community, we had lost Nick in 2009,
Mm-hmm.
and then that happened 3 years later, and it was kind of a
Right.
double whammy. Um, as it goes
Right.
for me, we actually that year we went on to win the state championship exactly 3 weeks after that accident happened. Um, we were featured,
Holy cow.
yeah, we were featured in Sports Illustrated, all that good stuff. And for me, I kind of went back to living life as usual. I went on coaching.
Mm-hmm.
Um, my first daughter was born in 2018.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then flash forward to uh, 2024, actually on the anniversary of Nick's accident, April 9th, 2024.
Mm-hmm.
That morning, I woke up just having debilitating panic attacks.
Mm-hmm.
For anybody who's listening, if you've ever Like, if someone says I'm having a panic attack, I'm not sure you're actually having a panic attack, because when you're having a panic attack, it's hard to articulate that. And they were so debilitating. I
Yep.
always say that morning is the first time when someone's asked me, "Are you okay?"
Mm-hmm.
That I said, "No, I'm not." And when I look back on it, those 12 years that had passed,
Mm-hmm.
I definitely wasn't doing okay. There are a lot of things that happened. Um, a lot of things that I had kind of become that
Mm-hmm.
I'm not super proud of, but I
Right.
also understand. Um, and so check myself into the psych ward, which is a very humbling experience for no one who's
Mm-hmm.
ever done it. Um, and that led to a diagnosis of PTSD,
Mm-hmm.
and that started a journey. That was I've always kind of looked at my life in chapters. I think a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people, you have times that you're like, oh, this is kind of a new start.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, as hard as that day was, as hard as the next few weeks and months were, it was really the beginning
Mm-hmm.
of a new chapter for me. I did an intensive therapy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, to had to take some time off work.
Yeah.
And when I came out on the other side of it, um, I just knew in my heart that I wanted to help other people,
Mm-hmm.
because anybody. My two main symptoms that I dealt with and still do every day, um, less severe at this point, but anxiety and depression. Those are kind
Right.
of the two biggest things that I deal with and have learned to manage. Anybody who's dealt with those things, man, if you don't have people around you,
Mm-hmm.
um, that you can lean on, that you can trust to be honest with, um, you're fighting it
Mm-hmm.
alone, and that's not a good space to be in. It's not a safe space to be in. And so I realized, I wanted to be able to be that for other people. I started my certification towards becoming an internationally certified coach. And then in the winter of 2024, founded my company, Grow Together Coaching.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the rest is history from there.
So, David, uh, I don't make too much about this while we're on YouTube because most of our talk is about teacher stuff.
Yep.
But I'm a combat veteran, and I was recently through the VA was diagnosed with major depressive mood disorder and general anxiety disorder, which ironically, my family knew this long before me.
Of course.
But my question is, how does being an educator take previous trauma and make it worse? How does do you think there's a connection there for us?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, thank you for your service.
Yep.
It is My brother is a first responder,
Mm-hmm.
and people who wake up every day and say, "I'm going to protect everyone around me, regardless of what that means for me." Man,
Mm-hmm.
there's no greater sacrifice than that. Um, Back to your question, it absolutely does. One of the things that trauma does to the mind and really to the nervous system, um, is it sends it into a state of chronic stress.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I've had back issues for 8 years, and it was
Mm-hmm.
just recently that it kind of started to go away because I felt more at peace, with where I
Yes.
was at. But that chronic stress, really for anyone, and the term trauma, in itself, I think a lot of people have a lot of different ideas of what it means. But
Yes.
really, traumatic experience is just something that is really hard for you to live through. And I think a lot of times people underestimate, how many things that they've lived through that they haven't actually processed.
Mm-hmm.
But your mind remembers, right? That stuff's all sitting back
Yes.
there. It's sitting back there in your
That's
hippocampus.
right.
Um, and that, really what chronic stress does is
Hmm.
it makes it difficult, almost impossible, for your mind and nervous system
Yes.
to be able to regulate,
Yes.
which is a word that's, I know that you use a lot, and it's definitely one that's going to come up a lot here tonight. Um, and it just, that chronic stress teaches your nervous system that it's not okay to relax.
That's right.
And so when your nervous system is, it ends
Hmm.
up in that state of constant fight or flight.
Yep.
um, on my podcast, Beyond the Darkness, we always talk about this. Your mind's not doing anything wrong. Your mind was designed to help you reproduce and to help you survive. And when
Hmm.
your mind is interpreting things that are
Yep.
happening as danger,
Yep.
it's going to do whatever it has to do to protect you. And so once you
Yep.
kind of hit that, I always say fight or flight is basically, the alarm system went off, and
It won't shut off.
there's no button to turn it off.
Right.
And so it definitely, not and it not only has an impact on your mental state, but it
Hmm.
takes a toll on you physically.
Yes.
When your body is in that heightened fight or flight state, your body over time is more tense. It affects your sleeping.
Yep.
It affects everything, because really, the mind and the body, they work hand in hand.
They sure do. So I can remember being 19 years old and being in the Middle East, and Scud sirens were going off, and I'm 19. I'm 19 years old, right?
Right.
And these Scud sirens are going off, and I had no clue what was going on. I didn't know if we were going to get hit. I didn't know if we were going to get bombed. I didn't know if there was like people with machine guns outside the door or what was going on. I remember being scared to death, and I can remember in, I guess it was 1996. We were fortunately I wasn't there, but at Dhahran, Saudi Arabia, which is a base that we established, Seymour Johnson Air Force Base. Whenever we went there, an Iranian terrorist came in there and blew the front off of the building where we stayed. I mean,
Mm.
parked a truck and blew it up. I'm going to try to find a picture of that here just after a while, and maybe I can put it up.
Yeah.
Now, I say all that to say this, because you made the point that the brain never forgets. When I got out of the military, shortly whenever I exited the military, I had a headache for like a year and a half,
I'm sure.
right here in the back of my head.
Yep.
I still get them all the time, and it wouldn't go away. I thought I had a tumor. I had all these MRIs and CAT scans and
Right.
everything. The doctor's like, "Bro, you're just fine. There's nothing in your brain. It's something going on,
First of
right?"
all, let me just say, uh, a knock on our medical system, that
Yeah.
your head hurts for a year and someone says you're just
You're
fine.
you're okay, right? I'm like, "No, I'm not okay. I mean, I hurt." And I happened to see this commercial one time for Cymbalta, and it was talking about how whenever you're depressed, it'll make your whole body hurt, and whenever you're under chronic stress, it'll make and it showed this picture of stuff going down your spine and these nervous receptors going out with pain.
Yep.
And I went to my neurologist and I brought that commercial up, and he gave me a prescription for Cymbalta, and in 3 days my headache had gone completely away.
Right.
That's how bad
Yep.
of shape I was in, and I was only like 27 or 8 years old, and
Right.
then compound that with an education career, 20 years in the pastoral ministry.
Yep.
And you talked about having a panic attack. If you're telling somebody you have a panic attack, you're probably not having one, because I mean, I collapsed in the floor at school,
Yep.
right? Because it became entirely too much
Yeah.
for me to continue to deal with. I lay
Well,
down, I'd get home and I would sit in my chair and my heart would would
yeah.
would take off and it would race like this. My legs would kick at night, right? I couldn't sleep.
Yeah.
I couldn't turn my brain off. And that was the worst part, is that I could not let the events of the day
Yeah.
go away. They
And
simply
yep.
wouldn't go away.
And I would just say, kind of to expand on a couple of the things that you said. Uh, there's, to kind of help people understand that mind body connection. A lot of times you'll hear people say, "Trust your gut," right? Well,
Yes,
there's a nerve that runs from your mind straight to the stomach.
sure,
And if anything in your stomach is off, it sends signals to your brain, like
sure.
that. And that's just one example of it.
Hmm.
Um, I also know, I would call what you were describing as the technical term is ruminating. I think the common term is spiraling, right? Like
Yeah.
you wake up and you hear educators talk about this all the time. They wake up at 2 or 3 in the morning and, right, they hear that one voice of the one kid, right? The one kid that's like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do, right? Then they ran out
Yeah.
of the room. Then they threw a chair. Then,
Yeah.
and, whatever it is. And, I think something that's really unfortunate in education is we've become kind of numb to this idea that, when you leave school, you should be able to turn that off, right?
Yes.
And having those thoughts that are ruminating, especially, if that's
Hmm.
happening when you're sleeping, you are not getting restful sleep.
You're
Um,
not.
and I've experienced it. I'm sure a lot of people that are listening have experienced, you wake up in the morning and you're like, I just had a whole school day in my sleep.
That's right.
And
Yeah.
that's not how we were designed to sleep. And
That's right.
unfortunately,
That's right.
that's just become so normalized in
I
education.
haven't slept well for 30 years. I haven't slept a full night.
Yeah.
I could literally take a half a bottle of NyQuil and I would still wake up every hour on the hour. I mean, I would feel like garbage, right? The next
Yep.
day. I mean,
Yep.
you know, but
Have a NyQuil hangover.
yeah, I struggle. I struggle even today
Yeah.
with being able to sleep.
I was
And
gonna.
it's
I was also gonna add back to you. You said you kind of were at school. You collapsed.
Mhm.
Another huge thing that I think that people in education don't recognize. I remember a couple years ago, I said to my therapist, he's like, "Well, when do you take a break?" And I
Right.
was like, "Well, I don't really like get a break." And he was like, "No, like when." And at the time I was an elementary administrator.
Right.
I've spent my career in elementary, taught third, fourth, fifth grade in Maryland. Um,
Mhm.
and then I was an administrator at two Title I schools. And he was like, "Wait, like you don't even get 5 minutes?" And I
No.
said, "No, like I've never really thought about it." And he
No.
said that he's like, "That's not okay."
It's not okay.
And so many people do that. And I think another thing that a lot of educators feel is that feeling of, you're trapped or you're stuck, right? Like you're
Yes.
stuck with that kid.
Yep.
You're stuck in that IEP meeting with that parent. And, our nervous system, when it starts to feel that, um, that is going to signal danger to your nervous system because
It
it's
does.
going to say like, this is a situation that you do not want to be in and you're not getting
Mhm.
out of it. And at some point, especially if that's happening day after day, that chronic stress, eventually your mind and body are going to do something to protect itself
It will.
from that feeling. And unfortunately, like you're describing, like happened to
Mhm.
me, like happens to so many educators, you can fight it until you can't, but
Right.
eventually your mind and body, it will catch up to you.
Well, I'll tell you what it did to me is I woke up one day about 4 years ago and my face went paralyzed. I mean, I thought I thought that I had a stroke,
Yep.
right? I did not have a stroke. Thank God I didn't have a stroke,
Right.
right? What I did have and what my doctor said is he says that it's a result of chronic stress, an onset of Bell's palsy. I mean, I was in so much pain. I hurt so bad. Now, and here's the thing as it relates to being an educator and being a military man and being in ministry. I was in so much pain. I hurt so bad. I couldn't talk. I couldn't. I had to tape. I had to walk around with my eyes taped. Right. I couldn't clamp my mouth down on a fork.
Hmm.
How many days do you think I took off?
I'm gonna guess zero.
Zero.
Yep.
0 days
Yep.
did I take off. I worked an entire another year without taking a single day
Yep.
off.
And
That
yep.
and that's not uncommon in education.
It's not. And unfortunately, the the way that public schools are designed in 2026 is,
Hmm.
um generally speaking, it's the same as they were in 1950.
They are.
but it's an entirely different world. And
They are.
unfortunately, educational systems, because they're strained too, and right, and that's why I always talk about like I don't like to blame people. It's the system, like it's the way that this is all set up to operate and to happen.
Mm-hmm.
It takes advantage of and relies
Mm-hmm.
on people going above and beyond
Mm-hmm.
what we should expect a person to
That's
do,
right.
um, e- e- especially based on the pay. I mean, it
That's
is,
right.
you know, since COVID, like we have not kept up, educational systems have not kept up with cost of living, uh,
No.
insurance, like all those things. And it relies on people like you, right? Who are saying, like, well, I have to be like, what if I'm not there today?
Mm-hmm.
What's going to happen? Like, who's going to have to pick up my slack? And
That's right.
it's truly just it's not a healthy
That's
way for
right.
people to
Hey,
exist.
and for clarity, I had enough time off to where
Uh,
I could take every Monday and Friday off for the next school year, and I would still have days off.
I'm
Okay,
sure.
I keep threatening to do that too. By the way, to my administration, because I serve as the dean of students, and they
That's
can't replace me. There's no sub for me. So if I'm not there, they're
right.
stuck with all the crazy
Yeah.
stuff going on. David, if you don't mind, we got a lot of people in here.
Yeah.
Gigantic crowd tonight, and I am super excited. First of all,
Excellent.
if you're out there, drop it into the chat box. Let us know your. Well, let me just pull it up right here on the screen. Tell us your grade level, your content area, but most of all, tell us your state,
Yep.
because I absolutely love to know where we're how far our reach goes, because it's not uncommon for us to have people in here from Australia, from the UK. I've some teachers that I talk to that are from China and from other places, and I want to give a few shout outs right here. uh, let's right here. Jules, happy 741. Thank you for sharing your story, David. Appreciate that. Listen, I hope his story and what we're about to talk about is going to be super helpful. He's going to share with you five steps to be able to get through this. Okay, so don't run off. Let's see. That's Sarah Ann's 1976. She was on last week, so if you guys haven't caught it yet, and that one's just starting to take off. Sarah is from New York, so go check that one out. It's still in the live right there. Here's Jules Happy 741. Constant fight or flight is devastating. I've been experiencing it for a while now. Grateful for this conversation. Bought the power of enough this morning. Appreciate that, Jules Happy 741. Let me also share with you, and I'm going to put down here for you, Jules. If you need anything, okay. I'm trying to type. You can reach me right there. If I hopefully I put it in right. Teacher Talk with John at well, okay, I didn't get the Gmail part right. Okay, I my fat fingers. Okay,
Guys, he's an administrator. He's forgotten how to
so
type and
if
spell.
you that's right. If you need anything, send it. Okay, send over a question. All right. Sarah's from New York. Oh, look who we got right here. We got Reese, 719, second grade teacher in Spring, Texas. That's what I'm talking about right there. All right. Appreciate you. All
God bless.
right. Let's see who else we got. Gosh, is that Megan Martinez, elementary school teacher, Marietta, Georgia? Hey, that's not very far up the road. Also, quick little story about Marietta. My wife and I, we were going to Ohio to visit my parents because they still live right outside of Cincinnati, right on the river. I'm in Florida. We were going up and we stopped in Marietta and ate at the Marietta Diner. Diners, drive-ins, and dives, baby. I don't know if we have any Triple D fans out there, but if you do, go to the Marietta Diner because
John,
it is 24 hours.
I gotta say, sorry to cut off your diners,
That's all
but
right.
I don't know if they're like a sponsor or anything. So if they are, send them my apologies. Megan, the elementary music teacher, right?
Yep.
God bless elementary encore teachers,
Yes.
because what does everybody say will fix behavior in public education? You have to have a relationship, right?
Yeah.
And you do. I'm not saying that you don't, but that's not the be all end all. And music teachers, right? Depending on how big their school is, they're seeing 400, 500, 600 kids and trying to manage them in a classroom that literally has bells, drums, music, all the stimulation you could ever want. So God bless you, Megan.
I would be going nuts. I can remember whenever my kids were in middle and high school and I had to go to the sixth grade band concert. Listen, I wanted to gouge, I wanted to stick like sticks in my ears to make it go away because it was so hard to listen to. But bless you, you're absolutely right. Hey, I'm going to drop a resource right there in the chat. That's 5 minute reset. We were talking about that just a minute ago. That it's hard to get 5 minutes, okay? But if you do get 5 minutes, there's a guide right there for you. It just takes you through some like breathing exercises and some different stuff. The whole purpose, David, and you tell me if I'm right or I'm wrong, but whenever we go through some breathing exercise, a little bit of movement, and some other things that are in the guide, it sends signals to our brain that, hey man, you're not in a war. It's going to
Yep.
be okay, right? So once you guys to jump in on that, let's see who else we
Hey,
got
I,
right
I
here.
gotta say, Megan put a comment in there about behavior in her principal, and first of all, Megan, it would be real helpful for your principal to just be reminded. We actually only control our own actions, not of kids, not of adults, not of
That's right,
anybody else's. And so
100%.
if he would be looking to come on my podcast, if it's assuming it's a he, it might be a she. If they want to come on and chat about that, I'd love to have a conversation with him.
Absolutely. Good stuff right there. Let's see what we got. We got Chelsea, Maryland, fifth grade. David is one of the best.
I
Bro,
appreciate you, Chelsea.
you got David. We got David fans in here tonight. That's what I'm talking about.
We
Let's see
got
who
we
else
got a couple.
you got a couple.
We
Nothing
got
wrong with that.
the David haters haven't made their way in yet. We'll cut it off before they catch
They're
wind.
on the way. They're on the way, I'm sure of it. Let's see what we got right here. Also, hey everyone, proud wife of David, an elementary
Absolutely.
literacy achievement coordinator, Western Maryland. That's what I'm talking about. Thanks for
Yeah.
dropping in. Appreciate it. Let's see what else we got right here. Ended up in therapy. Oh, that's who you were talking about, Megan, right there.
Oh,
Absolutely. The kids are 100% responsible for the behavior,
yep.
right? But isn't okay, so David is an administrator and I know he's a good one, and so he would never walk into the classroom and be like, he would never walk in and be like, you know what, maybe you just need to work on this, maybe you just need to do that, maybe it's because you said this and that set the kid off. You would never do that, would you, David?
No. And while we're on the topic of trauma, and
Yeah.
this kind of naturally just came up. I think it's also really important for teachers, but also adults, to just keep in mind, trauma can explain, but it doesn't have to excuse behavior. And I mean that whether
That's
you're
right.
interacting with a kid, you're interacting
Yep.
with an adult. When I always,
Yep.
hopefully some people will check out my podcast.
Hmm.
I've had some guests on that have shared crazy stories. I've shared some of my own, and none of it excuses what happened, but it can explain it and it can help you
Yep.
understand it. So
100%. Like what you said. That's one of the things that Dr. Pender and I talk about is we talk about, this mass diagnosis of kids with ADHD and this and that and the other.
yeah,
And kids will walk in, they'll have a discipline problem. The very first thing to come out of their mouth is, I have ADHD, right? And ADHD is a diagnosis. It's not an excuse.
it,
Okay.
it,
Not
it
at all.
some kids have ADHD and some kids have ASS disorder. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Some of them, some of them have BAD. Is what they got. Is that what you're getting at?
That's what I'm getting.
I know. So, all right, let's hang out there. Let's get out as many shout outs as we can get out before I miss them all right here. All
All
right,
right.
fifth grade teacher in Maryland. All right. Must be Dave lovers.
That was
All right, here's Todd. Todd, God bless all of our public school teachers, elementary schools, and high schools. Todd is an avid watcher. Okay, we got Vicky here, special ed case manager in Maryland. Good to have you. Thanks for jumping in. Okay, so Megan came back to you, said that her principal is a former Army person. Um, well, I
I
don't know.
think it could explain, but
Uh,
not excuse. How about if we just stick with that theme?
all right, Pittsburgh Pirates 14. Hold kids accountable. Yes.
Yeah, I agree.
Yes.
You can hold
Absolutely.
kids accountable with relational support. And again, it can
Absolutely.
explain but not excuse. And those two things don't have to be separate from one another.
Absolutely. All right. So I got to ask this question. You were talking about your friend. He went on to play with the A's or with the Angels.
Yep.
So both of you were apparently relatively good baseball players.
He was.
Yeah.
I mean, I played Division I baseball as a Division I catcher.
Okay.
I mean, I wasn't. I didn't get drafted, but I was.
So
I was decent.
my question, if you had been drafted, would you have wanted to be drafted by the Pirates or the Reds?
Oh, uh, probably the Pirates, but I don't
Yeah, I
know.
knew it.
I
I
don't know that
knew it.
either one of them would be a great choice.
I knew
I
you would
kind
go
of,
down
John,
here.
like with all due respect, I kind of enjoy winning.
Well, we've
I'm
won
pretty
two in
bad
the
at losing.
70s, two in the 90s, and we're on the verge of winning one this year.
Hey, I'm a Steelers fan, so I know what it's like to be a fan and say, but we won those Super Bowls in the 70s.
Check this out right here. All right, retired teacher, proud father of Dave. That's what I'm talking about.
Yep.
Sarah, Truth 5722. Yes, hold kids accountable. Absolutely. Sarah Ann, 1976. Sometimes she has panic attacks.
Yep.
Absolutely. Understand.
Let me just two things. First of all, thanks you to my dad for tuning in. He taught 41 years in public education.
Mm-hmm.
Um, So shout out to him. And Sarah, just kind of on that note of panic attacks, going back to what I experienced, um, I had like two illnesses in the months leading up to before I really just kind of crashed. I won't say crashed out because that's going to be triggering on a Sunday
Yep.
evening to teachers.
Right.
And you got to listen to your body. And
Yep.
I mean that in all sincerity. Your
Mm-hmm.
body will send you signals before things break down. And the mind and the human mind and the human body is it's just such an
Mm-hmm.
incredible system. But you have to listen to it. And I always say, my truly my why is I learned that if I didn't take care of myself, I couldn't take care of other people.
That's right.
And I've experienced some bad things. And there's people out there that have experienced a lot worse than me, and I
Mm-hmm.
know that. But the worst feeling that I've ever felt was not being able to take care of my girls,
Yep.
and that the root of that was I wasn't taking care of myself, specifically my
That's right.
mental health.
Yep.
And so for all the teachers out there that are listening, you guys love your kids. If you didn't, you wouldn't be doing it,
Absolutely.
especially at this point.
That's right.
But make sure you take care of yourselves, because if you don't take care of
Absolutely.
yourself, you can't take care of others.
Yep. One of the things that we say here is that the best thing, the number one thing that you can give to your kids, to your principal, and to your school is the most healthiest version of yourself possible.
Absolutely.
Uh, that's what an effective teacher looks like. I feel like we're being taken over by the Steelers and by the Pirates. I no, no,
We're not going there. That's a
no.
different show. We'll start that in August, John.
Yeah, we can start that podcast. All right. Look here. Susan, I'm not a teacher. I just offer emotional support to family members who are, God bless our teachers, and the invaluable work that you do. Thank you so much. All right. Just a couple of things right here. If you want to contact Dave or catch up with him and the work that he does, you can get it right there at the QR, or you can find it in the description. It's linked down there. It is no problem for you to get it. Dave, if they follow that, what would that be about? Tell our audience what they would find there.
Yep, absolutely. So that'll take you to my website. It's www.135aday.com. And that's significant because every day in America, 135 people die by suicide. Um, and that number is startling.
Yes.
For our teens, it's actually the second leading cause of death.
Yes. Yes.
And I would say, from my experience, things that I've learned, um,
Yes.
it's when people can accept that it's okay to not be okay. That's a number that we can bring down. It's a number that we need to bring down. So that'll take you to my website. On there, all my links for coaching. We have a suicide prevention program I'm launching.
Mm,
So
good.
all that's on there, and hopefully you'll check it out.
Good. All right, so you can catch all of our free resources right there at the QR code or down in the description box. Either way, doesn't make any difference. Just go get them. That's exactly why they're there for. They're created for teachers by a teacher, and they're free. They're 100% free, and they're always free. If you are interested, you can book a discovery call with me. All right, there at the QR code, or you can get it in the description box. You know what? It is amazing to me, Dave, the amount of people that will want to have, well, it's a video call, but they just to vent.
Absolutely. And
Just they're not even looking for help. They just want somebody to talk to,
well,
and
speaking
that's
of
help.
public education,
Yes,
I'm sure you've heard the phrase toxic positivity,
yes,
right? So that
yes.
I think that education made that have to be a term that someone came up
I do.
with. And
I do too.
and I will say, it is normal, and it is okay to need to release the things that are inside of you that are bothering you.
100%.
I always use the soda bottle analogy. If you took a soda bottle all day and you shook it up and you shook it up, right? At some point, if you don't open it, that thing's gonna explode. Or at some point when you do open it, it's gonna
Yep.
explode.
Yep.
And chances are the people that the soda is gonna mess up the worst, it's not gonna be you, it's gonna be the people around you. And I know that for all educators, that's the last thing that they want.
That's right. Check this out. 41 years worth of experience right here. What does it say? Demands on teachers have grown exponentially from when I started in 1984. The job has become nearly impossible. That is exactly our that is exactly our that is exactly our position here at Teacher Talk, is that teachers are being asked to do a job that literally cannot be completed. You cannot get to the finish line in education, in teaching whatsoever. All right. Pittsburgh
And I
Pirates.
will say too, real quick, on that note, when it relates to mental health, I'll never forget the day that my therapist, he said to me, "Well, hope is a human need." And it was just so
Yes.
eye-opening to me. And I know for me, and this is the thing that's is driving me out of public education. It's gonna be my last year. I'm gonna be running my coaching business full time.
Mm-hmm.
It's the inability to feel success.
That's it.
Like at the end of a
100%.
day, like what is success? Like, oh, we made
What
it through the day.
is
Like
success?
we got through a day. Like
You're exactly
you
right.
can do that 180 days in a row and think
That's right.
that 12 weeks off in the summer you're going to be able to come back ready to go.
Yeah. All right. Sophia, she says, I love my self care. Good to see you again tonight. Appreciate you jumping in. Oh, man, it's a Pittsburgh takeover. I'm not even going to let that up. I'm not even going to let that up. I'm not. Pittsburgh Pirates. I'll let that up. Thanks for the website, Dave. Well done. All right. Let's see here. We have, who do we have here? Rome and oh, that's Curtis Gauss. Man, appreciate you jumping in, Curtis. This guy was my principal for a couple of years. Best principal ever. Okay. However, he saw the light and he came back. He came back to the classroom. Okay.
Okay.
So that's good news. Chemistry, physics, physical science in Georgia. Man, appreciate you dropping in, Curtis. So before we get out of hand, you said something just a minute ago, and I want to piggyback on that. Is that as a teacher, it's almost impossible to know what success is. It's
Yep.
almost impossible to know if you've done enough. It's almost impossible to know where the finish line is. And that's why I created the power of enough. It is on that exact principle right there. All right. Is that you have to have a way to be able to determine when you've done enough and what is a successful day. And I'm going to drop that link right there in the chat for everybody to have. Again, it is a coaching. It's a 5-part coaching framework that helps you work through what is meaningful, what is necessary. All right, so that you can say, I've done enough for today, and I can walk away. Right. And part of that in step number 3 or rule number 3 is getting rid of invisible work, the work that lives in your brain, the work that follows you home, not the emails and all this other stuff, but the stuff that follows you home is getting rid of that. And that's very difficult to do. Wouldn't you say, Dave?
Yeah, it absolutely is. And by their nature, teachers, innately think like, well, what could I have done better? Right. And in a lot of ways, the educational system is set up for what could I do
Yeah.
better?
Yeah.
Um, and you have to give yourself permission to accept that, um, you if every day you show up and you give your kids the best version of yourself that you have that day,
You've
that
done enough.
it is enough. I love to work out and lift, and I always
Hmm.
say like, whatever your 100% is that day, you give it. And some days it's 100%, some days it feels like 150, and some days it feels like 30.
Yep.
But you can't give
Sure
more of
does.
yourself than what you have inside of
Yep.
you. And when you start to, or when you try to, that's when you're going to burn yourself out.
Absolutely. Absolutely. David, I got one more right here. My old friend Curtis. No way that any of us will be pulling for the Cardinals this year, right? We won't make that mistake,
Yeah,
will we?
I haven't watched
I
a Cardinals game since McGuire.
Me and Kurt, we used to talk baseball all the time, and that was back. The Cardinals were playing pretty good back in those days, and of course the Reds were horrible. But
Hey,
now we have Ellie De La Cruz, and that is hope for all of Cincinnati.
hey, there
So
you go.
there's that.
A
All right,
town like Cincinnati, that's all they need. They just need one guy.
just one guy. That's all we got to have. All right, Dave. So you developed a 5-step process, a coaching framework, and it begins exactly where it should. It begins with awareness. Tell us about that.
Yep, absolutely. So last year, um, I have a handful of coaching processes that I've used with clients, and I sat down one day and I said, I want to replicate, um, put a name to the journey that I feel like I went on, and replicate in that in a process that clients can access, either through coaching, or through other platforms. And in the end, I came up with, um, the therapish path, right? It's not therapy, it's therapish. And it starts with awareness, and that awareness is simply understanding, um, the thoughts, and I always say understanding the story that your mind is telling itself all day. We have anywhere from 60 to 70,000 thoughts on a day-to-day
Right.
basis. And 90% of them are either negative or the same thoughts that you had yesterday.
That's right.
And I'm sure a lot of people who are tuning in at the end of a day have said, "Man, I just wish I could turn my brain off. I wish I could just slow
Yep.
my brain down." Um,
Yep.
and so it starts with that awareness, understanding your thoughts, understanding the patterns, right? What are the things that set you off? Because, John, what bothers you at school, it's not going to be the same thing that bothers me. And we've all worked with people, and you learn each other's strengths.
Hmm.
From there, we go into regulation. And the I cannot stress this enough. A dysregulated mind cannot make an intentional decision.
Not it.
And that's
Not at
that's
all.
not anybody's fault. In fact, it's exactly what the mind was designed to do, because at the root of it, we're operating with the same brain that the cavemen were, right? We need to reproduce and we need to survive. It's just that the world has become much more complex. And so we have to get ourselves regulated so we can be thinking and operating from our frontal lobe, not our amygdala.
Yep.
Um, and so that regulation phase, talk about this on my podcast all the time.
Yep.
It's really supporting people in building your regulation toolkit. If you search regulation tools, strategies, ideas, you're going to find a million things, right? And I've tried things. At one point, someone suggested, like, have you ever just sat outside and watched the trees, right? And I went out there and sat outside. And after like 2 minutes, I was more stressed because I couldn't. I've been in a lone, quiet space for me. That wasn't something that worked. Once we've established that regulation, and this is what really makes this coaching process different, from anything else that's out there in the industry. We do a deep dive into identity, right? So phase
Hmm.
1 and 2, that tends to be where therapy kind of lives. Step 3 is what makes this unique, and that's the identity phase. Um, and through this process, you're able to put a name to who it is that you want to be, and then
Right.
also identify behaviors that would show you. I'm going to use a terrible teaching word, but this will help it make sense, right?
Hmm.
It's like success criteria for
Hmm.
who it is that you want to be as a person. For me, I went through the process myself, and I want to be a great father. I want to be a great husband, and I want to help other people. And
Right.
from the time that I was able to really connect that and clearly articulate it, at the start of the day and at the end of the day, I'm able to say, was I a
Mhm.
great father, a great husband, and did I
Yep.
help other people? And if I can say check, 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 I can look in the mirror and be proud of who I am, and I can feel successful. Step four is really identifying, so what are the day-to-day actions that I would take to live out this
Hmm.
identity? And then step five is figuring out how you actually integrate that into
Right.
day-to-day life. And one thing I will say about
Right.
this process, it's something I believe so strongly in. Um, it's all about making small change, right? So
Right.
many people, they say, yeah, I want to start exercising every day, right? They haven't exercised for 5 years. I want to exercise every day. Well, by the third day, right, what happens? They're not exercising. And it's not their fault. It's not that they're not disciplined. It's that they've shocked their nervous system, right? Your
That's right.
nervous system is going to say, like, it's not safe to do that. Yeah, I know what
That's right.
safety is. This isn't what's safe. And so you have to ease into that change. And that's really what the final step, integrating change, is all about. And really, the ultimate goal of these 5 steps is just to support people in living with intention. I think teachers, especially, we we tend to have come up in a system and to see the
Hmm.
world in a way that's like, I have my job, I
Yep.
make this much money, I do this, and then I repeat.
That's right.
And that simply just, it's not the world that we live in
No.
anymore. And teachers have so many skills, um,
Hmm.
that they can use that will be so valuable in other spaces. And I'm not encouraging all teachers to leave, but I am just encouraging everyone to know, you deserve to be happy. And it's
Hmm.
okay to be happy. It's okay to be fulfilled. And what 20, 30 years ago, what that might have looked like or what it needed to look like,
Hmm.
it's just not the case anymore.
That's right. So a minute ago, you made a statement there. A dysregulated mind can't make an intentional decision, and I just wanted to pull up a slide right quick and share it with everybody. This is what I believe David is talking about. All
Yep.
right. This is on the left hand side. These three burnout factors that affect teachers. All right, their cognitive load, decision fatigue, and a lack of autonomy. Those are extraordinarily, and it's not that, okay, so a lot of times we want to talk about, no, it's the kids, no, it's the parents, no, it's the bad administration. Okay, all of those fall into that cognitive load section over there. That's everything that has to do with the job. The job in then the decisions. I read again today. I don't think it's true. I actually think it's more that the average teacher makes about 1,500 decisions a day in the classroom.
Oh, I
Um,
believe
I,
it.
it- yeah, I actually think it's more. And then the lack of autonomy, the fact that we don't even control our own outcomes because we're coming into testing season. Fourth quarter is the worst time of the year to be teaching because of the test that goes on. And if you think kids have test anxiety, I guarantee you teachers have test anxiety
Yep.
because in Florida, 34% of your evaluation is based upon the data that's going to come out of that test. And guess what? You really have no control over it because the kid could walk in and Christmas tree the test, close the Chromebook, and go to sleep for the next hour and a half.
Yep.
Right? There's no autonomy. As a result, we're over here uh, working in our amygdala right there.
Yep.
All right. That is exactly where teachers get stuck for 10 months out of the year. And it's even worse right here in May because
Yep.
of everything that's going on. And
Yep.
the goal is to get back here in the prefrontal cortex,
Yep.
as you talked about. So
Absolutely.
let
And
me,
I will say, back to the kind of the therapist path, in that awareness phase, something that can be game changing is even just recognizing, like, oh, I'm in my amygdala, you know, that can change everything for you, not only in the classroom, right? But at home. You know,
yes,
my wife's on here, so I'll flip the script, right? Like, trash was supposed to go out, it hasn't gone out. right? And she wants to feel some kind of way or say something, she might recognize like, wait, I'm in my amygdala. Um, and when you can though, truly, true, all in all seriousness, when you can recognize, um, okay, hold on, like this isn't actually who I want to be, and something that we teach in the regulation phase, it's the regulation pause. So a stimulus, whatever that might be, a sound,
Yes.
a message, a smell, whatever it is, the
Hmm.
amygdala responds to a stimulus in 0.7 seconds. It takes the frontal lobe 2.0 seconds to form a response. Now, that's only 1.3 seconds, but a lot of bad can happen in that time. And so the regulation
Oh
pause
my
that we
gosh, can it ever?
intentionally, yeah, the regulation pause that we intentionally teach and practice, what it's designed to do, it's simply allowing your frontal lobe to catch up to your amygdala. That's
Yep.
and that's all that it is. Um,
Hmm.
so many times when you'll see someone, they take a deep breath, right? And you think like, oh my, I was able to relax my body, and all of those things are true, but in reality what you did is you gave your frontal lobe time to catch up and say,
Hmm.
okay, hold on a second, like what is
Yep.
actually happening here?
Yep. That was the whole premise behind the 5 minute reset guide
Yep.
that we created here at Teacher Talk, was to do just that. Because I want you to think about it. How many teachers do you think down through the years have ruined their entire career in 1.3 seconds because they shoved a kid?
Oh, I would say the majority of teachers, administrators, whatever it is, that did something that ended their career, that was what happened. Because nobody gets into education because they hate kids.
Not normally.
No, no, but I mean, I've never met a single one. Um,
Right.
and so yeah, it's easier said than done, and that's where that decision fatigue comes in. That's where
Hmm.
that sense of feeling trapped, of feeling like I'm
Hmm.
never going to escape this moment. That's really where that kind of comes in.
All right. Check this out right here. All right. So we have Bad Manners Podcast. Now that's what I'm talking about. During my first 4 years as a teacher, the principal asked me how she could help me. I told her the best thing you could do is leave me alone. And she did that, just that. What do you think, Dave? Autonomy matters.
Autonomy does, and I think that any good leader will recognize and empower their teachers, at the district level, empower their school leaders to know that, nobody knows those
Hmm.
kids better than the person who spends the time with them. Nobody knows their staff better than
Hmm.
the person who's in the building, right? Like in the
That's
weeds
right.
with them every day. Um,
Hmm.
and look, learning, I mean, it is important. I think we see the impact of poorly educated generations in America today, and so there certainly is always room for improvement in anything that anybody does. But
That's
recognizing that
right.
the teacher knows the kids,
That's right.
and so any school leader that's out there that's listening, um, I wouldn't I wouldn't recommend a teacher do anything that I wouldn't feel comfortable stepping in front of a room of kids or in front of a kid and doing myself. And
That's
I
right.
think it's also unfortunate the number of conversations that happen with teachers about kids who the person
Hmm.
has never actually met the kid or interacted
That's right.
with the kid, because the unfortunate reality is that the challenges of society, they get projected onto schools, and people
They
hope
do.
they hope that school systems are able to address those needs and address those realities. And in reality, schools weren't necessarily ever designed to do that. But every kid has a story, every teacher has a story. um,
Hmm.
and this isn't just for education, this is just for the world in general. Man, if we would just give everybody a little bit of grace, like
Yes.
just relax a little bit, like
Yeah.
everybody, it's a cliche saying, but everyone's battling a fight that, you probably have
Absolutely.
no idea about. And, just one last thing that I would encourage everyone to do when you look at a kid, um, you look at an adult. I've said it to myself in the mirror before. Before you ask yourself what's wrong with you, ask yourself what happened to you. Um, and that's in any interaction that you have with a child, with an adult. Um,
Hmm.
I had a podcast episode recently, and one of the things that I said was nobody ever woke up in the morning and said, I want to be the biggest asshole in the world today, right? Like there's probably
Right.
a story behind it. And if we would just give each other a little grace, take a deep breath, and recognize that there's a reason behind every behavior, whether it's a child or an adult.
Well, unfortunately, we seem to live in a time where we want to think the worst of others and hold them in the worst light as it relates to their behavior or their conduct or their life while simultaneously holding ourselves in the best light possible.
Yeah.
And that creates a problem because clearly we all have blind spots and we'll never really know just how we project ourselves to other individuals.
Yeah.
Pittsburgh Pirates 14 with the response of the night, from stimulus to response. Instead
Hey,
of reacting, we respond.
that's
That
correct.
is a much that is a much better way right there.
It is.
All
And
right,
I will
right
say,
there.
at the root of the therapist path is that identity, right? Because you can get yourself regulated and you have to. But if you don't have a clear identity for who it is that you want to be, how do you want to exist in the world? What type of husband do you want to be? What type of teacher? Whatever the
Mhm.
case may be. If you don't have a clear identity, then you're just guessing what it is that you want to do next. But once you have that established, then that can drive, every action that you take.
So how would a teacher implement these 5 steps into their day? I mean, do they have a workbook, or do they have, time? Do they need to spend time with you, or
Yep.
um,
So,
Chat GBT? I mean, how would they do that?
you can ask ChatGPT. I've tried to turn my ChatGPT into a therapist a couple of times, but it didn't. I think at some point it said get over it and get back to work. Um, there's two ways really that people can access the therapist path. One is through one-on-one coaching. It's a 10 session process. So 2 sessions per step. And the other thing that I'm launching this summer, which I'm super excited about, um, are group cohorts specifically designed for educators. They're going
Hmm.
to get to experience the therapist path for themselves, and then also get trained to facilitate their own groups in the future. And that's really important to me because, um, I know what teachers bring to the table. I know the types of skills that they have, how they understand people. And so I'm super excited to, kind of take in my first few cohorts and give teachers a little
Hmm.
taste of the coaching world. And that's really who it's designed for. It's designed for people who, they not only want to improve themselves, but they have the skills to help others in the future. And on my website, there's a tab. It says "Become a Coach."
Hmm.
All you have to do is just fill out that information. It's going to be an 8 week cohort, 1 session per week, and I have time set up throughout the day to make it accessible.
Hmm.
Based on teacher schedules, because at some point when a pandemic hit, John, what was going to solve it was we're going to go to school more in the summer, and that's what's going to fix the problems. And then teachers get pressured into like, well, we need you. Well, can you do tutoring? Can you do this?
Right.
Can you do that? But all that
Yep.
information's on my website, and my contact information's on there also. So
So I think right there, so at the QR on the screen, they can access
Mhm.
all that at the QR or down
Yep,
in the description box at the website
yep,
down there. Want to
yep.
encourage you, want to absolutely encourage you to do that. Want to talk about just well, first of all, we had a few comments over here and I missed them. I want to go back. Roman Recharge right here. Check it out. Uh, and this guy lives by this right here. The principal's main job is to shield their teachers while they lead the school, shield from parents, the do, and sometimes from He means district office, by the way.
District office, the castle.
Yes, that's what he means. And sometimes from the kids. And he's
Yep.
100% right. He's absolutely right. And he lived that the entire time that I served under him, under his leadership, and I appreciate that. It's absolutely true. Let's see here. Pittsburgh Pirates. I tell teachers to look at the why behind the behavior and not the who. And man, you know, that is good advice, and it's very difficult advice. I'm almost 20 years into it, and I still find it very difficult because some of it is so personal,
It is.
right? I mean, some of these kids, they know how to cut to the core. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And
So
I mean, it's
just
like it's like telling a mama joke to a 6-year-old. And you know how that he told me I'm talking about my mama. You know what I mean?
it is.
It's really hard.
On that note, and this kind of transcends education. Um, it's important for people to understand, and it is so hard. Um, People who are having big emotions, right? Maybe people who have experienced trauma,
Yep.
people who are just going through it. Um, the
Hmm.
people that they will lash out to the most and hurt the most are the ones that they trust the most,
Yep.
because there's safety, and that it's not fair.
Yes.
Again, it doesn't
Yes.
excuse it, it doesn't explain it.
No, you're
But
right.
especially with kids, we have so many kids who step through buildings of schools, and the only person in the world that they trust is their teacher, and unfortunately the
Yep.
teacher takes the brunt of it.
Yep.
um, and I say that having said I've been the person that the kid trusted the most and said, like,
Yep.
I need a minute away from this kid right
Absolutely. Yeah. I brought Sarah's comment up there while you were talking about that. It is very challenging, but it is also very true that you know th- those that get hurt the most are the ones that are closest or trusted most by the student or closest to the student. But it's also true that people who hurt other people.
now. Absolutely.
And that is oftentimes the why behind behavior. I don't know about your schools, and my school is just a little old country school. I mean, it's a great school. It's a great district, by the way. But there are some kids that have been horribly, horribly, horribly abused,
Yep.
and they don't just shut that off when they show up. I mean,
No.
all it takes for me to go off on a kid at school is to leave home without my keys, and I can't get into my office, and I have to go borrow a set of keys.
Yep.
I mean, I can have that happen and walk right into the cafeteria and just start cleaning house.
Well, and unfortunately, again, it's hard to recognize in the moment, and it takes intentionality. And again, this is with kids or adults. Um, it's important to remember that, any human learns to communicate emotion based on how it was modeled for them, right? And in that way, I always say I started therapy when I was 36, and at the start, I would tell the therapist something that happened, and he would say, "And how'd that make you feel?" And I was like, "That made me so mad."
Mhm.
And he said, "Great job." And looking back, right? Meanwhile, I'm saying to pre-K kids, like, "Well, how do you feel?" And they can't. And I'm like, "How can you not tell me how you feel?" Right? That was me
Yeah,
when I was 36. Um,
yeah.
and so, kids who hurt others, right? That's something like kids don't
Mhm.
come out of the womb as humans who just are destructive and want to hurt the people around them. In fact, it's actually the opposite. Um, and so learning and understanding and seeing it as, it's really a skill gap, right? For a child or for an adult, to be able to recognize, like, that really, really made me mad. And I'm going to take a deep breath and I'm going to explain that to you, as opposed to, throwing
Mhm.
a chair at you, as opposed to running out of the building, as opposed to whatever kids in high school do in the cafeteria
Oh,
when John makes them mad.
I can. of all the behaviors, I think elopement is the worst behavior because I have to go chase them around in the hot Florida sun. All right, Dave's in here. Agree with Roman Recharge about principal's main job. Good steal. All right, we got writing his story. I praise God for my administration. My school's leadership really believes that. You are fortunate. You are very lucky because not all do. And the reason why they don't, a lot of them, sometimes it's bad leaders, but oftentimes it's leadership above them that forces their hands on certain issues, and there's really nothing they can do because they're trying to keep a job just like you and I.
Yep.
That's why we don't. That's why we don't bash administrators in here.
Yep.
Not too much. I mean, sometimes we get after them, but for the most part, they're trying to work a job just like us, and they've got demands over top of them as well.
And just on that note, John, for all the teachers that are listening, it's only, I mean, there's schools, unfortunately, in this day and age, I mean, it is such a high stress environment all the time. And everyone is, in reality, like everyone is actually existing in an escalated state all day. Um, and so I would just encourage teachers who are listening, when there's a decision made or something that you don't understand, find time to have a conversation with the administrator. Because a lot of times sometimes there is a valid explanation behind it that's just a different perspective. And sometimes they just, administrators experience decision fatigue as well. It just tends to have a larger impact in the sense of how many people it impacts. I don't think that anyone has a bigger impact on kids than the teacher that's with them all day.
That's right.
But again, just giving a little bit of grace and being willing to have a conversation. I think
That's right.
it goes a long way.
Yep, 100%. Roam and recharge. He says, my wife teaches K to 5 students with special needs, behavior disorders. She was hired and told to advocate for her students, but then gets shut down when she advocates. Very frustrating.
Can I
Very
add
frustrating.
something to that?
Absolutely.
We've I think around 2023, right, was when people first started saying like, when are we going to stop blaming the pandemic? Okay. But I think, when we look at schools, you kind of see two eras of schools. And back to the funding thing, the needs of the students who are stepping into our schools, it's completely different than what it was 10 or 15 years ago. And unfortunately, a lot of school systems, they're not equipped with the programming, the staffing that they need. And I think an unfortunate reality is at times that there probably are districts, there probably are leaders who have to go about making a decision or having a conversation in a way that fits the needs of what's available, not what's best for the kids. So
Hmm.
hopefully there's no special ed advocates on here, but uh, if they are, you know, I think that's the reality, and especially when it comes to young learners with behavior, um, it's a long process that at times can be very frustrating.
Pittsburgh Powers 14. He says, why not who? It matters. It also provides insight to the issues to be exposed and corrected. I don't think the issue is not about who. I think the issue is just that why should come first, right?
Yeah,
Whenever,
absolutely.
whenever we're whenever we're looking at a behavior issue,
Yeah,
um,
and
because who who make it personal? Too personal?
I think that it does, and it's hard in any human interaction to not take it personally. And unfortunately, I've had to have conversations with teachers and say, like, I hear you. Like, I know you are busting your butt every single day, and that kid or those kids don't care, quote unquote, right? Like whatever that looks like or whatever it means. Um, and I think when you can remove the who from it, it does allow you to look at the behavior and the experience, minus the human factor. But I would also say that that's something that's really, really difficult to do. And again, back to what you kind of said to start the show, I'm not sure how manageable or how long term sustainable that is.
I don't either. Um, Let's see right here. Writing his stories. The fact that they do believe it's their job to protect their teachers means that they're literally placing themselves in the line of fire all day. I know they're making their own jobs 100 times harder. You are 100% right, and I'm going to tell you, Roman Recharge, who is in here tonight, he is the shining example of that. He is the shining example of that. 100%. Let's see what else. I guess I wish my students would extend the kind of grace to me. Yeah, I struggle with students who criticize my every decision when I'm new and I know they won't be perfect, but still have to make them. Absolutely. It's very, very, very difficult.
And I can, again, back to what we were
Yeah.
just discussing. Um, I would imagine in my home, in the homes of the people that are listening, we make mistakes, right? And we own them to our kids and we say, hey, I'm sorry this happened. Here's why it happened. Next time, blank. And so when you look at it as a skill deficit, as opposed to like something personal or something
Hmm.
that's wrong with someone, um, unfortunately, a lot of those soft skills are things that we have to teach kids in schools now. And when you have a schedule that's jam packed with curriculum, from bell to bell, where does that fit in? And that's where teachers are just magicians in figuring out how to make all that come together.
That's also why they're going nuts, too. It,
I,
I,
I
I
agree.
mean, I mean, sometimes I wonder if are these expectations or is this exploitation? Which one is actually occurring? And I know that the response is expectations, but when you are a leader and you know that the amount of expectations are impossible, so much so that on average, teachers are working 10 to 15 hours per week beyond contract hours just to tread water.
Yeah.
At some point, somebody has to say, that's those are no longer just expectations. We're exploiting this contract,
Well,
and
and I
that is dehumanizing.
absolutely, and I think one of the biggest flaws in the public education system in America is the fact that decisions about what happens are made by people who aren't in schools, right? And
Right.
I'm not talking about district office,
That's
central
right.
office. I'm talking about state
Legislators.
legislators
Yep.
who, and those people, to their defense, right, they're legislating. I mean, in Maryland, heck, the uh, huge bridge got knocked down in Baltimore. Like, these are the same people who are deciding what we do when a kid's behind in reading, is deciding what company is gonna rebuild a bridge. And so it's just a blip on their radar. um
Hmm.
and so, I mean, I'm sure it'll never happen, but if there were a way to kind of take the politics out of education and actually, at the state and federal level, put it in the hands of people who have an understanding of what it takes to make a school successful, I think that it would do a lot of good for kids and for teachers.
Absolutely, it would. So, Laura, if I can get it up right here, or Lori, special ed's a joke. They push kids who are so far behind. I feel bad for them. The behaviors are a direct result because the kids with special needs can't do the work. And then she goes on to say that kids with special needs do not get the individualized instruction they need. Unfortunately, they're pushed in. I totally agree with. I agree that the decisions are being made by others outside of education. All right, so she's talking about inclusion right there. And David, there's a lot of data that just finally came out. Thank the Lord, it's what we've known all along. That inclusion, there are districts that are 100% inclusion,
Yeah.
and you literally are taking students who have real disabilities, in particular with sensory issues and on and on and on, that they simply cannot stand to be in
Mhm.
those areas, and then we wonder why they're throwing and hitting people over top of the head with a chair.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you pointed out the sensory stimulation thing. Like, these are students who, we have testing, we have diagnoses that they are easily overstimulated, and yet we put them into an environment that is incredibly stimulating.
Hmm.
Um, and my guess would be, with the people who are listening now, other people that you've talked to, I think the one of the biggest frustrations that I have heard from teachers is the way that a few kids can impact the learning of so many. Um,
Yes.
and you know, I have some ideas for how that could happen, but I don't think that local districts are ready to fund all that.
Yeah.
Uh, but it is, and it's hard for teachers. It's hard for administrators to watch a
Yep.
couple of kids ruin the learning for kids who did step
It
in
is.
ready to
It
learn.
is. And
Um,
oftentimes their hands are completely tied. There's nothing they can do about it, no matter how hard they try. What I think is interesting is, I talked to a lot of teachers, and we did an episode sometime back about violence against teachers and students that have hit teachers and push them, and verbal violence and stuff like that. And it's extraordinarily traumatic to teachers. And I'll just be honest with you. We had an event here in Florida, it's down in Matanzas, Florida. I think that guy was about 6'5", about almost 260, 270 pounds. And his teacher took his Nintendo Switch away, and he beat her almost to death
yeah,
in the commons area while everybody watched.
yeah.
Okay. That's traumatic to her, wouldn't you say?
Oh my.
Yeah. But do you
If,
know who?
if that happened in any other field or industry, that person would probably have significant time off. They would probably have
Yes.
a new environment. Uh,
Yes.
yeah,
What,
that
what is
not
what is
only traumatic
interesting?
to her, but traumatic to all the kids who watched, all the other staff who watched.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, okay. That's the exact point I wanted to make right there. Is that every kid that saw that is traumatic.
Hmm.
All right. So how much more traumatic is it whenever we are intentionally placing students in environments that, as educators, we know they shouldn't be there, but there is a law forcing us to do that? How much more does that traumatize the entire classroom
Yeah,
when that kind of stuff goes on? All right, the number one goal of an educator, or mandate, I would even say, is we have to create a learning space that is safe, in the sense that the student believes that they're going to be okay, regardless of their opinion, regardless of the other kids, and that there's not going to be all this other stuff going in the classroom. And we have completely lost that.
yeah,
And I point it right back to IDEA. All right. And everybody's going to be a hater. I'm not against IEPs. My son had an IEP. He was dyslexic. He needed an IEP.
yeah,
But the IEP in the least restrictive environment has been so weaponized against schools that literally everybody is held hostage. Not just the administration, not just the teachers, but more specifically, the students
yeah,
are held hostage by
yep,
it.
yep.
This is a problem, right?
And
And it leads to the burnout rate amongst teachers, which is right about, it's at 53%. 53% of the nation's teachers say that they're burnt out. Half of America's teachers
that's
are
just the
burnt
ones
out.
that are saying it. The
That's
other,
just the ones that are saying
there's
it.
at least 30% who didn't believe that the survey was anonymous.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Yeah,
So I don't know. We got a couple right here. Writing his stories. I think they probably get to retire on disability. They
yeah.
didn't. Okay. They didn't. She has permanent damage. All right. And her district fought her on the workman's comp and this and that and the other, tried to make it a workplace issue, just the same way that Abby's Warner, was she up your way? Abby's Warner, the
Oh,
teacher that was shot by her first grade student.
oh,
He brought a weapon to school,
I remember.
and he shot her through the hand and through the chest. They tried to work that out all the way through workman's comp, as if that's a normal workplace injury. That's exactly what happens to us,
Mm.
right? So on and on and on. Sarah Ann 1976, IEPs are highly abused. All right. Does anybody have any questions? If you do, drop them in the chat. If not, we're going to give Dave the last word, because like every teacher in America will probably see this in the next couple of days. And I want him to be able to speak to teachers. But before we do that, I want to remind you, we want to connect with Dave right there. You can catch up with him. All right. If you can book can they book a call there with you, Dave?
Yeah,
All
absolutely.
right.
All
So
my
yeah,
links are on there, and
yeah. If you want
uh,
to catch it, you want to catch a call with him, you can catch it right there. Good
yeah.
deal.
I also, John, I just want to say, I always say this on social media to people, but whether you or someone that you love, when you get to that spot where you feel, I have my T-shirt on. You are not alone. You're not broken. That's the theme of my podcast. Um, if you're at that point, my number is on my website. Um, I ain't gonna charge you, but just know that there's someone on the other side who will pick up the phone. And I've learned for myself, to accept that it's okay to not be okay. And
Yep.
I think that one of the hardest things for people to do is to just check in with someone and say, like, how are you doing? And the reason why it's so difficult is because you don't know what they're going to say. And if they say I'm not okay, like, well, then what do I do? And I can't promise you that I'll have the answer for you, as far as what you need to do next, but I promise that we won't get off the phone until we have a plan. And
Good deal.
just I've felt alone, I've felt broken, and I never want anybody to have to experience that.
Yep, me too. All right, all of our free resources are down the description box. You can get them right there at the QR code. Oh, by the way, I know that not everybody knows this because we have a lot of folks come in here, but I don't want to say it's a disclaimer, but I want everybody to know that Teacher Talk is a 100% faith based organization. All of our material is faith based. So if you go get those, I just want to make sure that you can expect that that's what you're going to see. All right. It's not a disclaimer at all. It's just that I want you to know. If you'd like to book a call with us, you can get it in the description box or you can get it right there at the QR code. Also, I just dropped in the chat the link to the Power of Enough. It has turned into be the it's turning into be the number one product here at Teacher Talk. And also, I'm going to have some updates to that because I'm going to add some personal calls to that to make it a little bit more beneficial. Because I know that it can be hard to work through a PDF with some linked videos, and stuff like that. So I want to give people a little better stuff right there. In the chat, what do we got here? Good stuff, Dave. Appreciate you, Pittsburgh Pirates cluster coach. There he is. Listen, this guy right here, first member of the Teacher Talk channel right there. Appreciate you, man. Chicago, probably a Cubs fan. So I don't know what we're going to do about that. Julie's happy 741 point in there. She's very grateful for the conversation. I missed it a minute ago, but I think she said that she's a Cubs fan. What?
Okay.
What?
You got to respect Cubs fans, man.
What? Yeah,
I,
anybody that can
I
pull for the
appreciate you
Cubs,
tuning in, Julie.
anybody that can pull for the Cubs for 108 years, right? I'm a Red Sox fan at heart, though. There you have it. Dave, tell America, speak to every one of the teachers in America, and let's encourage them before we go.
Absolutely. Thanks everybody that tuned in. John, thanks for having me.
Yeah,
Um,
man.
if there was one thing that I could say, it would just be keep in mind that if you can't take care of yourself, you can't take care of other people.
Can't.
Um, and the unfortunate reality is that the job that teachers are doing every day, it's incredibly challenging, it's demanding, um, and you have to take care of yourself if you want to take care of your kids, and that's why you got into it. Um, and I would also encourage all educators. That burnout rate's 53%, and
Yes.
you only get to live this life one time.
Yep.
And so just know that don't feel like you're trapped kind of in that environment. Um, and lastly, I would just say, um, just know that it's okay to not be okay, and whether that's you're having a tough day at work, um, something's going on in your life, or you're just feeling some kind of way. If we would all just give each other a little grace and accept that,
Yes.
check in with each other, and you know,
Yep.
a bad minute doesn't mean a bad day, and a bad day
Nope.
doesn't mean a bad life.
That's
But
right.
sometimes it can feel that way, and so
That's right.
take care of yourselves, take care of each other,
Mm-hmm.
um, and thank you for all that you do. It's as hard as the job is. I will miss, the kids, the tough kids that I connected with, that I knew that I made an impact on.
Hmm.
For me, it's kind of reached a point where I need to make sure I'm taking care of myself, and my family. But thank you for all that you do every day, man. You have one of the toughest jobs in America, in society,
Yep.
and although it might not feel like it, you're changing lives every day.
Every day.
Yeah.
I, I think that I would follow that up with um, the number one thing that you can do for your kids, for your principal, for your organization, for your family, and for yourself is to present the most healthiest version of yourself possible. Beyond that, I would say this: if you have the days, take them off. When the bell rings, go home. If you ain't feeling it, don't go. I think that's what I would say, because this is a tough job. I don't care. I get so much, well, not a lot, but some, just so much hate about how lazy teachers are and how we get all this time off and yada, yada, yada. And you get paid for all this time off. And it's ridiculous, obviously.
Yeah.
You're teachers, this may be the hardest job on the earth. So you stay strong and keep teaching. Dave, we had a bunch of people jump in the comments right here. You got a couple more minutes?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do it.
Somebody remembers 2016 in the Cubs right there. We won't dig on that one much more. All
We won't
right,
do enough.
Megan, thank you both for everything. Appreciate it. Laura Grissom, thank you. John and David, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Roman Recharge, good conversation. Keep up the good work, John. Appreciate it, boss. Man, what a mentor. What a mentor. I appreciate him. Let's see here. 24 years of watching the Cubs. Oh, 24 watch. I thought it was going to be the Cubs. Holy cow. I can't get the Cubs off my head. All right. Reese says, thank you both. All right. Cluster coach. Yes, I agree. Appreciate that. Lori, amen. Appreciate that. Sarah Ann, thanks for the great conversation. Well, Pittsburgh, listen, you're not disappointing tonight. That's a Pirates fan to no end right there. Hey, some are lazy. We're all not hard working. That's what I'm talking about. I missed one right here, and I wanted to go back and get it because they asked a very specific question, and it came down in the chat, and I lose them sometimes. So I want to get back to it. But the question was, how often do we have these conversations? There it is, Pittsburgh Pirates 14. Dave and I did a podcast a while back. It was just a regular video. This is the first live that we've done.
Yeah.
So if you guys enjoy the live, if you want him to come back, drop a one in the chat. If you think that it's too much to have Pirates and Steelers fans in here, drop a two. How about that? What do you think? If you want him to come back, drop a one in the chat. Let's see what we got. Because I just think they're conversations that we got to have more of. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. Um I the people being willing to talk about challenges that they're facing, the struggles that they're having, it
Hmm.
could be game changing just for our society in general if we were more willing to be honest, to be transparent, and especially people who are they're teachers and they want to be strong and they feel like they need to be superhuman. Not only do you not have to be, it's not healthy to try to be. So more we can have these conversations, the better it'll be for kids and teachers.
Yeah, I think so too. Um, because obviously the way that we feel or the struggles that we're having as adults, we can hide that for a time, but
Yeah,
eventually it just leaks out,
it does.
and it starts leaking out into everything that you do.
Yeah.
That is exactly what happened to me. I became the most toxic employee that's probably ever worked at a school. I mean, toxic. I mean, I was just I mean, for a lack of better words, I was broken. Okay, so just so that you know, Dave, there's all kinds of ones in the
Okay.
sidebar. So we're
Okay.
gonna have to come. We're gonna have to come back
Absolutely.
at some time. We appreciate everybody that's been here. Appreciate everybody dropping in. Hour and 30. That's a pretty good conversation.
Yep.
Here's what I would encourage you to do. Everybody that's out here, yeah, it leaks out to kids. Pittsburgh Pirates 14. You're 100% right. That's exactly where it goes. Here's what I would encourage everybody to do is right there at YouTube, share the link with your staff, with your school, with your friends. Share it with the teacher down the hallway that you don't like because they're grouchy all the time. They probably need this as well, because the goal here is to help educators. Okay. All right. Y'all have a good night.